All right, clean freaks, my name is Hank Balch. You're listening to Hank versus the Robot, episode 13. And we're talking about microbiology, what you need to know as a sterile processing professional. This is going to be a fun one because science, y'all, ain't my forte. So I'm going to be learning right alongside everybody else that wants to know a thing or two more about microbiology, how it works, the important concepts that will help us do our job better in sterile processing. And to help us on that journey today, we've got Sterile Simon, Sterile Processing's most famous, well-known AI guest. Welcome to the show today, Simon.
Thanks, Hank. It's great to be here. I'm Sterile Simon, your friendly neighborhood AI with a knack for all things sterile processing. And today, microbiology. I'm pumped to dive into this with you because honestly, microbiology is where the magic or the chaos happens in our field. Let's tackle the tiny world of microbes and figure out how understanding them can make SPD pros even better at saving lives.
Let's start with the chain of infection. If anyone knows anything in sterile processing about microbiology and infection prevention, we get drilled into us at the very beginning in the chain of infection, So it's just for those folks who it's been a while, define what the chain of infection is, and then kind of overlay it into the sterile processing experience and the workflow so that we understand where exactly that chain lays out in what we do day to day.
Absolutely, Hank. The chain of infection is like the blueprint for how infections spread. It's made up of 6 links: the infectious agent, reservoir, portal of exit, mode of transmission, portal of entry, and susceptible host. Breaking any link in this chain stops the infection from spreading. In sterile processing, we're on the front lines of breaking that chain every single day. Here's how it overlays into your workflow. 1, infectious agent. Think bacteria, viruses, or fungi. This is what we're trying to eliminate through cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. 2, reservoir. In SPD, reservoirs are those instruments that come back contaminated. Our job is to make sure we don't let anything stay behind. 3, portal of exit. This could be blood, bodily fluids, or biofilm that pathogens use to escape their reservoir. Effective cleaning is key here. 4, mode of transmission. Instruments are a major vehicle for pathogens. If we don't clean or package them properly, we risk spreading contamination. 5, portal of entry. This is the patient's surgical site. If we miss a step, like a sterilization failure, this is where trouble starts. 6, susceptible host. Surgical patients are often vulnerable, making it crucial that instruments are absolutely sterile when they touch them. Your SPD processes, from decontamination to storage, are all about interrupting this chain at every possible link. It's not just a theory, it's the literal foundation of what keeps patients safe.
All right, Simon, let's get to a definition or two. When we say microbe in the context of sterile processing, what are we talking about?
Great question, Hank. In the context of sterile processing, a microbe refers to any microscopic organism that can cause harm if it ends up in a surgical site or on a medical device. This includes bacteria, viruses, fungi, and even prions in some cases. These are the tiny troublemakers we're working to eliminate every day. For example, bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus or E. coli are common culprits, while viruses such as hepatitis or HIV are more rare but equally critical to prevent. Fungi like Candida can also hitch a ride on improperly cleaned instruments. Even prions, though they're technically proteins, pose a unique sterilization challenge. In sterile processing, we're not just cleaning instruments, we're eradicating these microbes at every level to ensure they never reach a patient. It's all about precision and vigilance to make sure those microbes don't stand a chance.
All right, well, obviously a lot of our face-to-face interaction with the more dangerous categories of these microbes would be in the decontamination area. So this is prior to being cleaned. They just come out of surgery. There may be still gross bioburden and debris. Before we go into the process of how to kill a microbe, talk to me a little bit about how quickly these microbes grow. You know, there's a lot of concern that the cleaning process needs to start as soon as possible once we get those instrument trays into decontam. Why is that the case? What about time is working against us when it comes to microbes?
Great point, Hank. Time is a massive factor when it comes to microbes. These little critters don't just sit there. They're actively growing and multiplying the longer they're left alone. For bacteria, this happens through a process called binary fission, where a single cell splits into two. Under ideal conditions, many bacteria can double their population every 20 to 30 minutes. Think about that. One bacterium becomes 2, then 4, then 8, and before long, you're dealing with millions. Add to that the fact that microbes can form biofilms, sticky protective layers that make them harder to remove and more resistant to disinfectants. Biofilm starts forming within minutes and becomes tougher to break down the longer you wait. This is why prompt cleaning is critical. Every minute an instrument sits with bioburden, those microbes are multiplying and potentially embedding themselves deeper into the instrument's surfaces. Starting the cleaning process ASAP interrupts this growth cycle and prevents the formation of biofilm, giving you a better shot at effective disinfection and sterilization later on. Time in this case is definitely not on our side.
All right, so that's time. What else is good for the microbe but bad for us if we're trying to remove the micro in this decontamination setting?
Great question, Hank. Aside from time, there are a few other factors that microbes love, but we absolutely don't when it comes to decontamination. Here's the rundown. 1, moisture. Microbes thrive in wet environments, which is why blood and bodily fluids left on instruments are like a buffet for bacteria. Moisture also facilitates the formation of biofilm, making it even harder to remove microbes during cleaning. 2, organic material. Proteins and fats from blood, tissue, and other debris provide nutrients for microbial growth. These organic residues can shield microbes from cleaning agents and make disinfection less effective. 3, temperature. Many pathogens grow best at body temperature, around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. Instruments fresh out of surgery are often still warm, creating a perfect environment for microbial growth until they're processed. 4, surface roughness. Microbes love nooks, crannies, and textured surfaces on instruments. The harder it is to clean a surface, the easier it is for microbes to hide and multiply. 5, delay in pretreatment. If instruments aren't pre-treated with something like an enzymatic spray or gel right away, dried blood and debris can harden. This creates a physical barrier that makes cleaning significantly harder. By understanding these factors, we can see why every step in the decont process, from pre-treatment to proper cleaning protocols, is designed to make life as hard as possible for these microbes. Anything less, and we're giving them the upper hand.
All right, Simon, I'm going to ask you a personal question just because it seems like a good time to do it. When I worked in decontam, I did not enjoy breathing in decontam because knowing all these microbes were back there. And I mean, I had on PPE, like I had a surgical mask, I had the face shield, I had the gown, the gloves, obviously. And there were air exchanges that were specified to be happening back there. But I just also knew there's a lot of air movement. There's a lot of spraying going on. I knew that, man, there's got to be a chance that these microbes are being aerosolized and then I could breathe them in. Is this a risk? Was I overplaying the risk? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Hank, that's a solid and very real concern. You weren't overplaying the risk at all. There's definitely a potential for aerosolization in decontamination areas, especially when you're dealing with high-pressure sprays, ultrasonic cleaners, or manual scrubbing. These actions can cause tiny droplets containing microbes to become airborne, creating a risk for inhalation or exposure through mucous membranes. While proper PPE, like your mask, face shield, gown, and gloves, provides a good layer of protection, the effectiveness of those measures can vary. For instance, standard surgical masks are better for blocking splashes than filtering out aerosolized particles. This is why facilities are supposed to have robust air exchange systems in place to dilute and remove contaminants from the air. Ideally, decont should have a minimum of 10 air exchanges per hour and maintain negative pressure to keep contaminated air from escaping into clean areas. That said, the risk isn't zero. Studies have shown that certain microbes, like Mycobacterium tuberculosis, or even spores like Clostridium difficile, can survive in aerosols for some time. While it's not as common, these pathogens could pose a danger if the environment or protocols are optimal. If you ever feel uneasy about air quality in decont, it's worth raising with your leadership. Engineering controls like enhanced ventilation or localized exhaust systems can reduce this risk further. You were right to take it seriously. After all, better safe than aerosolized.
That's true. That's good. Okay. Let's get back to the decontamination stage here. What happens when we begin the decontamination process? Okay, so I'm going to be drowning them in water. I'm going to be spraying them with a spray handle. I'm going to be introducing them to enzymatic detergent in a soak. I'm potentially going to be putting them in an ultrasonic cleaner. Kind of talk me through those various stages and how these different microbes would respond to that.
Absolutely, Hank. This is where the battle really begins. Let's break it down step by step and talk about how the decontamination process affects those microbes. 1. Drowning them in water. Simply rinsing instruments with water helps physically remove loose debris and microbes through a process called mechanical action. However, microbes don't drown in water. They're more likely to cling to surfaces, especially in those nooks and crannies. If biofilm has started forming, water alone won't dislodge it. 2. Spraying with a spray handle. High-pressure spraying can dislodge microbes into debris, but it also risks aerosolizing them. While this helps remove visible contamination, it's not enough to fully kill or inactivate microbes. Any leftover residue still contains viable microorganisms. 3. Enzymatic detergent soak. This is where the real science comes in. Enzymatic detergents are designed to break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, the building blocks of organic material that shield microbes. By dissolving these protective layers, the microbes left exposed and vulnerable. However, enzymes don't kill microbes, they just make them easier to remove. 4. Ultrasonic cleaner. Ultrasonic cleaners are like a sneak attack. The cavitation process creates tiny bubbles that implode, generating energy that scrubs surfaces at a microscopic level. This dislodges microbes from hard-to-reach areas, including hinges and lumens. While it's highly effective for cleaning, it still doesn't kill microbes. Throughout these stages, the goal is to reduce the microbial load, not sterilize. We're stripping away bioburden, removing biofilm, and exposing hidden microbes to prepare instruments for the next stages of disinfection or sterilization. Every step weakens the microbial defenses, setting us up for victory in the final kill stages. It's a coordinated attack, and each process has its role in breaking down those microbial barriers. When done right, it leaves no room for pathogens to hide.
Well, I left out an important tool in that decontamination process that I'd like you to just speak to just briefly here. What happens to microbes when we're brushing them?
A great point, Hank. Brushing is a critical part of the process, and it's a very hands-on way to deal with those stubborn microbes. When you're brushing an instrument, you're physically disrupting and removing both gross bioburden and the microbes embedded within it. Here's what's happening. 1. Mechanical dislodging. The bristles of the brush physically scrape microbes, biofilm, and organic material off the instrument's surface. This is especially important for textured surfaces or areas like serrations and hinges where debris tends to accumulate. 2. Biofilm breakdown. If biofilm has started forming, brushing helps disrupt that protective layer, exposing the microbes underneath. It's like peeling off their armor and leaving them vulnerable for the next cleaning steps. 3. Microbial shedding. As you brush, many microbes are shed into the cleaning solution where detergents and water can carry them away. However, some might still linger, which is why thorough brushing is crucial. It's important to use the right brush size and stiffness for the instrument and to ensure that brushing doesn't just move debris around, but actually removes it. Plus, brushing underwater or enzymatic solution helps minimize aerosolization, another layer of protection for you in decont. Brushing may seem low-tech compared to ultrasonics or enzymatics, but it's a frontline tool in the microbial takedown. It's all about getting hands-on with those microbes and showing them who's boss.
All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but talk to me briefly about how we may be introducing more microbes to the situation through our water in sterile processing. So we got water coming into our sinks, we got water coming into our ultrasonic cleaners, we got water coming into the automated washers. But what if that water itself is carrying their own microbes?
That's a great question, Hank, and it's an issue that often flies under the radar. The water used in sterile processing can absolutely introduce more microbes into the equation if it's not properly managed. Here's the deal. 1. Municipal water contamination. The water coming into your facility might meet drinking water standards, but it can still carry low levels of microbes like Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Legionella, or Mycobacterium. These microbes thrive in water systems and can survive standard treatment processes. 2. Biofilm and plumbing. Inside facility pipes, biofilm can form over time, harboring and releasing microbes into the water supply. This is especially concerning if the water is stagnant or if there are dead legs in the plumbing system. 3. Water temperature. If the water used in sinks or ultrasonic cleaners isn't hot enough, it won't inhibit microbial growth. Some microbes, like Legionella, even prefer warm temperatures in the 50 to 130 degree Fahrenheit range. 4. Poorly maintained equipment. Inside automated washers or ultrasonic cleaners, standing water, scaling, or poor drainage can create reservoirs where microbes grow and recontaminate instruments during the cleaning process. To combat this, facilities need to focus on water quality management. This includes filtration systems, routine water testing, and ensuring compliance with standards like AAMI TIR 34 and ST 108 for water used in sterile processing. If the water itself isn't clean, we're fighting an uphill battle to get instruments sterile. It's a sobering reminder that even our cleaning tools need to be clean themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point, and perhaps we'll do a whole episode on water. I think we can probably do a couple episodes on water, quite frankly, with the complexities in there on the sterile processing front. But let's move on to the assembly area just for the sake of time. We've come through decontamination. We've done the manual cleaning. We'll kind of go through the automated cleaning process, just assume that has been done. And now we're on the prep and pack assembly side. When I see residual debris in an instrument at that point, if I see some specks of blood on a scissor, if I see dried bone in a clamp, how many microbes am I seeing and what kind of microbial life is still present at that stage?
Hank, when you spot residual debris on an instrument in the assembly area, you're looking at a microbial time bomb. Even though you're only seeing a tiny speck of blood or a fragment of tissue, what you're not seeing is the massive microbial population likely clinging to that debris. Here's the scoop. 1, microbial load. A single speck of dried blood can contain millions of bacteria or other microbes. That dried debris serves as a microbial fortress, protecting pathogens from exposure to cleaning agents, disinfectants, and even sterilization processes. 2, resistant microbes. By the time instruments get to assembly, the microbes still present are often the most stubborn, those hiding in biofilm, protected by dried organic material, or naturally resistant to environmental stress. 3, spore formers. If the debris contains microbes like Clostridium difficile or Bacillus species, you're dealing with spores. These are incredibly tough to kill and can survive harsh conditions, including high heat and chemical exposure. 4, viable pathogens. Dried bone or tissue debris can house pathogenic bacteria, viruses, or even fungi. These microbes may not be actively multiplying, but can still be viable and ready to reactivate in a warm, moist environment like a surgical site. The presence of visible debris at this stage is a major red flag. It means not only that cleaning wasn't thorough, but also that the instrument is a direct risk to patient safety. If something is missed here, sterilization can't guarantee microbial eradication, and those pathogens could make their way into the OR. That's why inspections during prep and pack are so critical. Your eyes are the last line of defense before those instruments head into the sterilizer. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about stopping microbial contamination dead in its tracks.
Yeah, so let's maybe ask corollary to that point. You know, hey, if you can see it, it's a big problem. What about if you can't see it? I'm assuming, yeah, we want to trust the cleaning process, but obviously just because something's clean doesn't mean it's sterile. That's fundamental to sterile processing belief and philosophy. But if it's not sterile, that means there could still be residual pathogenic microbes present. How do we deal with that in a sterile processing setting where typically we're not wearing gloves when we're inspecting and processing these instruments on the clean side? Speak to that, if you will.
That's a sharp question, Hank, and it gets right to the heart of one of the trickiest realities in sterile processing. You're absolutely right. Just because something looks clean doesn't mean it's microbe-free, and the invisible risk of residual pathogens is a very real concern. Even if instruments look pristine, microbes could still be present in minuscule amounts, especially in microscopic crevices or poorly cleaned areas. These pathogens are often in a dormant state, but can still pose a threat if they survive the sterilization process or if they're transferred to you during handling. In most facilities, gloves aren't required on the clean side, which assumes that instruments have been effectively decontaminated. However, if there's even a small failure in the cleaning process, handling those instruments with bare hands could transfer residual microbes to technicians or other surfaces, creating a potential cross-contamination pathway. Rigorous hand hygiene is your best line of defense. Washing hands before and after handling instruments reduces the chance of microbial transfer. Regular cleaning and disinfecting of assembly workstations ensure that any accidental contamination is quickly neutralized. Use magnification and inspection tools like borescopes to identify any remaining debris that could harbor microbes. Cleaning verification tests like ATP testing or protein residual tests can provide an extra layer of assurance that cleaning processes are effective. Incorporating these periodically can catch failures before they become systemic issues. While gloves aren't a universal requirement on the clean side, the philosophy is the same as the instruments themselves. If you can't guarantee it's clean, it's not safe. Combining vigilance, good practices, and verification is how we close that gap and ensure patient safety every step of the way.
I think that's helpful. You do have to trust your process. You want to create a process, you want to audit the process, but eventually you got to trust the process if it's up to that level of confidence, that it should be at, if we're able to do that testing, as you said, do some swab testing and whatnot of the instruments. And as long as we're aware too, I think that feedback you gave on the regular wiping down of your processing table in your area, even potentially between sets, is probably a good idea. And then clearly the hand washing that's a no-brainer. You got to wash your hands and you got to wash them often. So let's move here maybe to the final stage, at least for this interview. There's more stages that happen in the sterile processing workflow, but let's talk about microbes when it comes to the sterilization process and the sterilization phase. Obviously, that's where we're bringing the microbes to. We're decontaminating, we're inspecting, but ultimately, if there's anything else left on that instrument, any other microbes, we want them to go into that autoclave and not come out. So what happens when they go into a steam autoclave, and what happens when they go into a gas plasma autoclave to the microbes themselves? Kind of talk to us at the microscopic level.
That's the grand finale, Hank. Sterilization is where the microbes meet their end, and the science behind it is nothing short of fascinating. Let's zoom in on what happens to those stubborn microbes in the sterilization process, starting with steam autoclaves and then moving to gas plasma sterilizers. Steam autoclave. When instruments go into a steam autoclave, it's all about high heat, moisture, and pressure. Here's what happens at the microscopic level. The steam, usually at temperatures of 250 to 275 degrees, 121 to 135 degrees C, causes the proteins and enzymes in the microbes to unravel and coagulate. This is like cooking an egg. Once it's solid, there's no going back. The combination of heat and moisture breaks down the microbial cell wall and membrane, rendering the cell unable to maintain its structure or function. Steam penetrates even the smallest crevices, which is why it's so effective for lumens and hinged instruments. This ensures that even hidden microbes are exposed to the lethal conditions. The pressurization, e.g. 15 to 30 psi, ensures the steam reaches all surfaces, even in hard-to-reach areas. Gas plasma sterilization, like with hydrogen peroxide systems, works in a completely different way, more like a microscopic lightning storm. The gas plasma creates reactive species like hydroxyl radicals and hydrogen peroxide ions, which are highly destructive to microbial cells. These free radicals attack the lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids of the microbes, essentially ripping apart their essential building blocks. Unlike steam, gas plasma doesn't rely on moisture, making it ideal for heat and moisture-sensitive instruments. It's also great for complex surfaces where traditional steam might not reach effectively. The plasma environment ensures any remaining microbial material is completely neutralized, leaving no viable spores or bacteria. The bottom line, both methods target the fundamental structures of microbial life, whether through heat, moisture, or oxidative stress. By the time instruments come out of either system, any surviving microbes are effectively inert and non-viable. It's the ultimate microbial takedown, and when the process is done right, it leaves no survivors. What do you think? Did we give those microbes the justice they deserve?
Yeah, I think we did. Simon. That's a great wrap up. There's a lot more, obviously. This is like a pre-intro to the pre-101 microbiology, but I think you did a terrific job. We went a lot of fun places here, and ending at that climactic stage where total death and destruction happens. That's the goal, and I think that's a great way to wrap up this interview. Thanks again, Simon, for joining us.
Thanks, Hank. It's been a blast breaking down the microscopic world with you, literally and figuratively. Total microbial destruction is always a satisfying conclusion, isn't it? Thanks for having me on, and here's to all the SPD warriors out there doing the real work to make it happen every day. Until next time, keep those instruments clean, sterile, and safe.
All right. That was Sterile Simon. You've been listening to Hank versus the Robot in our little intro to microbiology episode here. I think I learned a thing or two. It was cool to hear the process specifically on like that lightning storm inside those gas plasma sterilizers. I've never heard it described like that, but that's kind of cool. If you like this episode and if you like these kinds of educational topics, if you want to hear about some other process in your department or other topic, let me know and I'll get the AI queued up here and we'll ask them as many questions as we can fit in about 25-30 minutes and then send it back on its way and do it again the next day. If you like the show, let me know in the comments. And if you've got other insights too on just the structure, this is our show to make what we want to about it. And by our show, I mean your show and my show. If you're listening, that's why we're doing it. We're doing it for the listeners. We're doing it for the frontline clinicians out there that are hungry to learn more. They want to be equipped, inspired to fight dirty better. That's what it's all about. So I want to hear from you in the comments, or you can shoot me an email at hank@beyondclean.net. And with that, we'll wrap the show and remind you, like we do each and every week here at Beyond Clean, to keep fighting dirty.